Hello, and welcome to another episode of Track Talk Live. I am Miss Choo Choo, and I am joined here with Mr. Clickety. We're here to answer your questions about model trains, so start asking those questions in the chat. We'll try and answer as many of those as possible. And also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, which is right below the chat box there, so you can be informed when we're doing our next Track Talk Live and get some tips in your inbox. So, Doug, what have you been doing since the last Track Talk Live? What have you been up to?
Well, you know, we've had a polar vortex.
We have. It's been very cold here. I don't know where you are all located, but we're in Minnesota. So we're in the negative 30s.
Yeah, you can text us and joke about it. Anyway, the one good thing about a polar vortex is I stayed home. I hibernated for 2 days.
Oh, that means you can stay in and work on your layout.
And I did. I worked on model railroad stuff. I turned up the heat and worked on model train stuff.
There you go. Yeah.
But I've been excited about some different things, and I've been to a couple of shows. I think we talked about the Albany show I went to last time, and I've been to Cocoa Beach, Florida show.
Oh,
and
I really wish you were in Cocoa Beach right now.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah. I sure do. But I was going to start out with a photograph here of, let's see, is that going to come up? This is a local model railroad. We went on a layout tour, some buddies of mine and I. This is a guy who has a layout that I think is close to 3,000 square feet. It was absolutely huge. And I just wanted to show a few scenes. Now this is a northern Minnesota theme. And these are ore docks from, I think, I'm not sure if these are the Duluth ore docks or the Superior ore docks, but basically or Lake Superior ore docks. And if you're familiar with the Walther's kits, the ore dock kits, he took, I think, if I remember right, there was like 6 or 8 kits put together for each one of those ore docks to make them the size that they're at. I mean, it's just really just an amazing piece of work. Plus the ore boat there and the tugboats and all that. I mean, that is just a really fantastic piece of work. So this is another shot of the same layout, a steel mill scene. And it's just to walk into this room and see the size of this layout is just mind blowing. Yeah. And it's so well done. Not only does it look, but it operates really well too. And they actually have operating sessions over there that where 30 people can run trains at a given time.
Wow, that's a lot of people to run trains.
Yeah, I mean, so I just wanted to show a few pictures of this. It's just it's such a phenomenal piece of work. And I think he told me how many ore cars he has, but I can't remember. It's like thousands of ore cars.
Yeah, for that big of a layout.
I mean, it's just wild. There's another shot I took just so you can see what it's like. I think the original Walther's ore dock was only 2 tracks wide, and so he did them the way the real ore docks are, 4 tracks wide. So I mean, the kit bashing is really phenomenal. Okay, now these are pictures from Albany.
Oh, okay.
I can go through them. I don't even need to critique them, I guess. I mean, they're all so good, but I just wanted to show some of these models. I showed some at the last Track Talk Live. These are just more, they're not only, they could be model displays or vendor displays. Okay. These vendors make up their models to show. And I think, I mean, looking at the work here, I mean, this is just, I think, just phenomenal. Looking at the weathering on the roof and everything. What's wrong with it? Nothing. I like the sacks over on the right-hand side by the green part of the building there, and barrels, and just a lot of character. And here's another one I thought was pretty cool. This is a guy who makes, these are building flats. They're probably only, maybe 2 inches deep.
Wow.
And they're deep enough so you can light them from behind, and that's what he does. But he actually sells these kits. And they're made so that you can kind of put them together the way you want. They're sort of modular, you know, and then you can put them together the way you want. But I mean, look at that. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
And these, of course, are all laser cut and everything, all that kind of modern.
Oh, so they're very precise then.
Modern technology. Now, here's another one. I mean, I just love this. for some reason, I love the combination of railroads and water. I don't know what it is, but this is kind of a neat deal where there's a track buried in the pavement there, a spur with looks like a way to load some kind of a small craft from a boxcar. But I mean, there again, looking at the buildings and even the open windows on that building. On that building to the left is pretty neat, and then the the weathering on the building to the right. I mean, that is really pretty phenomenal, I think. Now here's another one. Look at this. Now isn't this great?
Yeah, it looks really nice.
So he's got the cracks in the pavement with weeds growing up in the cracks.
Dispersed weeds in there, yeah.
Some people out front of the building talking, and you can actually see the weathered siding. And if you look real close, you can actually see the nails.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you can see it there, but you can actually see the nails are in the siding.
Some close detail there.
Yeah, I mean, really, really cool stuff. It really inspires me. I just love this kind of work. Okay, here's another one of those warehouse buildings that is only a couple inches deep. I mean, look at the architecture of it.
Really nice windows.
And the weathering. Yeah, the windows are neat, and the awnings down below, and then the curved awning at the entry there with the lighting underneath it. Neat stuff. Here's another one, just an example of a neat depot.
An interesting shaped building.
Grimsby. I'm not sure exactly where the real depot was, but yeah, it's just a neat model. A lot of character. This actually, with the turret there, looks like a depot that could have been on a diamond where two tracks were crossing at right angles, and so that there could be another track across there, and then the turret faced both tracks. But anyway, very nice. There, look at that.
Shell gasoline. Very old sign there.
Yeah, yeah, and the old hot rod out there in front, and the signs in the building, and the old tire, and all that. I mean, it's pretty doggone neat. There you go. Look at that. Look at all that junk out there. I just love all that.
A lot of weathering.
That junk, and we talk about. I'm in the historical society in my town of St. Louis Park, Minnesota, and we look at pictures from 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
All these towns are a lot junkier looking than they are now. I mean, they really are cleaned
really?
up.
Wow.
I mean, people forget how different things are now. But I mean, this was typical to see things piled up on the sidewalk and all that. That just it was before OSHA and all that kind of stuff. Clean water. I mean, people drink dirty water. What the heck,
Builds immunity.
Yeah, yeah. So all that kind of stuff. But I mean, they're again looking at the weathering on the shingles and even the people in these photographs. I like that guy with a vest on and the gray hair.
Even on the sidewalk where it has like the yellow "do not park" around the curve there, and then it fades into regular parking area.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I mean, it just yeah. There's another one. I'm going to keep sending in pictures to put on the website from conventions and shows that I've been at, but I also would like our viewers to send in their own pictures too, and we'll be nice. We'll critique them. We'll critique them in a nice way.
Yeah, if you have any photos you want to send in or a question, send them to Doug@modelrailroadacademy.com, and we'll feature it on the show.
Yeah, yeah. We'll give your name and everything. Now here's another. I'm going to go back to some more pictures here. Here's another one that's a stiff leg crane that looks like they're loading some kind of stone, like a slate stone there. But I just thought that was a kind of an interesting model. Look at this. Lubrication service, and there's a chain hoist that's comes off of the roof, and I like this chain link fence. Now I've used this for my layout, this bridal veil stuff that you can buy off fabric. This like this, it's like a netting, and you can cut it so it's diagonal like that, and then you can color it, and you can make a chain link fence real nice that way.
If it's fabric, does it stand up stiff enough, or do you have to put like some glue on it to make it?
Well, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it different ways. You can actually spray artist fixative.
Oh, okay.
On it, spray fixative. Stretch it out on something and just spray it, and it'll get stiff, and then you can color it too. So like this has got a rusty color on it.
Yeah, looks nice.
Okay, so now I wanted to show this flyer. This is the flyer for the meet I was at in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Oh, okay.
And maybe I mentioned it last time, but actually all around the country there are these what are called RPM meets.
Okay.
And that stands for Railroad Prototype Models.
Railroad prototype models.
And whereas the convention I went to in Albany, New York was more on structures, these RPM meets are more on railroad equipment.
Okay.
And they do some absolutely fantastic stuff. I mean, the model building is just unreal. And this show, I didn't realize it until I got down there, but this is actually the 19th year that the show was put on. And
Long time.
I wish I had gone there years ago. I just didn't know about it. But anyway, it attracts, of course, Florida in the winter, right? Florida in the winter.
How can you go wrong?
It attracts modelers from all over the country.
Yeah.
And some really fantastic stuff.
Cool.
This I wanted to show. This is pretty cool. This is a model of a locomotive that was done by Rapido Model Works out of Toronto, actually.
Okay.
And this was a special project that was done for the Railroad Museum in York, England. And it's a locomotive they have. It's called a single. It's called a Sterling single.
Wow.
And it's a very early locomotive. I mean, the real locomotive could be, Gads, I don't know, 150 years old now, but it's a 422. And the main driving wheel is about 8 feet tall.
Wow.
It's just really an impressive looking thing.
Yeah, looks very interesting.
Well, this museum in York has this locomotive, the real locomotive.
Oh.
And so they wanted to do a model that they could sell to their, to the people that come into the museum. And so they contracted Rapido Models and a guy named Bill Schneider, who I met at the convention, who helped design this locomotive. He did a seminar on the process of designing and building this locomotive. The locomotive was actually, the model was made in China.
Okay.
But they actually went over to York, England, and they with a guy over there that can do this laser measuring.
Okay, get very precise.
Oh, I don't know how the heck they have, they have this like a camera kind of a thing on a tripod, and they go around the locomotive, and anyway, it's just absolutely amazing what they do. And then they take all these dimensions over to China, and Rapido has their own plant over in China.
Okay.
And then they showed the whole process of designing the locomotive. Of course, they'd have to put a mechanism inside.
Yep.
And then, then to do like a sample model and make sure everything works and all that. But it just really a tremendous process. So thank you to Bill Schneider on that one. That was really a neat deal. And if anybody wants a model of this, you have to get it through the museum in York, England.
You have to go to England to get it.
Now here's a model. Okay, now I just wanted to show, this is a model that was at the show in Cocoa Beach. Look at that thing. I mean, just incredible. This is a narrow gauge caboose off the Denver South Park and Pacific Railroad in Colorado. This is a bigger scale model, but I mean, look at the detail. Look at the weathering. Look at everything. The grab irons. It blows your mind.
Yeah.
The level of modeling quality, just is beyond words. Even the guy. How well done the figure is there, and holding the lantern, and that kind of work inspires me. Now this is another thing that is pretty neat, and I wanted to show you this. This is like a container packer for a railroad, like you'd see. They use these, I know, in Long Beach, California, that huge harbor they have there. This is a Santa Fe version, so this is probably a model of something maybe in Long Beach. But this is, look at this model. Look at this thing. It's incredible. It's for modern railroading. But I mean, just look at this thing. Look at the way it's built. I mean, it is weathered and everything. It's really fantastic. Yeah. And that was it's a company called Dimensional Modeling Concepts out of Omaha. The guy's name is Mike Brusky. And I talked to him, and I just, to be able to design a model like this and actually build it and sell it, I mean, that is just phenomenal.
Pretty impressive.
Now here's another model that was there, which is it's a transfer caboose. But there again, look at the weathering. Look at the rust streaks and the spots where the paint is coming off, and then the rust runs down. And the weathering on the roof, the kind of the patina on the roof, the rust. I mean, that to me that's another fantastic model. Yeah. So of course I come home from these shows and I just get all inspired, and then the polar vortex comes and I stay home and I do stuff. So Okay, now to shift gears a little bit, I just wanted to bring this up. Somebody had asked me about this book. You know, I'm going to the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike celebration, and actually it happened in Promontory, Utah in May. And it's going to be a huge event. There are people from all over the world that are going to be there. And the Union Pacific Big Boy locomotive is going to be there. It's the largest locomotive operating in the world. It's sat in a park in Pomona, California for, I think, close to 60 years. And the Union Pacific Railroad brought it back to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and has completely rebuilt it. And its first big outing is going to be to this convention. And actually, it's being held in Ogden, Utah. That's the major city right there. And the Ogden Union Station, the old Ogden Union Station, has the Railroad Museum there. So it's going to be a big wing-ding and lots and lots of people. But somebody was asking about reading the history of the Golden Spike, and I think this book is probably the best one I've ever read, and is by Stephen Ambrose, who does a lot of World War II stuff. He's just really a fantastic author, does a lot of research. I just love his work. And he wrote this book, Nothing Like It in the World, that tells about all the work that had to be put together to make this transcontinental railroad happen back when there just really wasn't much of anything. I mean, you know, it's like they said, building a railroad through that country out west in those days, you might as well be building it on the moon. It was basically the same thing, you know. I mean, there's nothing out there. All the supplies had to be brought in. Anything from that was cast metal had to come from the East Coast on a ship all the way around the tip of South America to Sacramento to get up the Sierras to the Central Pacific. So anyway, great book. I highly recommend it. Anybody that wants to hear about the convention or wants to go to the convention in Ogden should read this book. Okay, now I just one funny little thing. I want to start a little conversation on crazy little tools.
Crazy little tools.
And I want people to send in pictures of tools they use. And model railroaders are well known for buying tools and using them for something that they weren't really intended for. Or even products, fabrics, and whatever it is.
Anything.
But I thought I'd show this. I've had this for a heck of a long time. In fact, I think my mother might have actually had this.
Very old.
But we have the picture of it here. But it's actually it's a sifter with a little wheel. And you can actually spin the little wheel with the handle, and you can put foliage and ground foam and any kind of scenic cover. I've actually used this to sift flour out for snow scenes. So you can put stuff in there, and all you do is you sift away with it.
And just let it sprinkle around your set.
Yeah, and it's a doggonest thing. Anyway, simple little tool, but I just thought I'll bring some more tools in next time. But I just wanted to show that thing because I thought it was such a neat deal.
Yeah, share with us in the chat if you use any unique tools or if you have any recommendations you want us to read aloud.
Oh, I just wanted to show a couple other things. I'm sorry, I got off the track, but this is a couple of things I wanted to show from the RPM in Cocoa Beach. This is a great pamphlet I got from Woodland Scenics called Field Systems. I mean, look at that. Look at the picture on there. Isn't that?
It looks like a real photo.
Yeah, it's really a fantastic work. And I got a KD brochure that shows everything about their trucks and their couplers and all the dimensions and the wheel sets and I mean the tools, you name it. Really fantastic. So that was something I really liked at the show. And this was a guy, not a vendor, but a guy who did a clinic on, you know, people, there's a lot of different styles of railroad passenger car trucks. And this guy did a seminar on all the different styles of trucks and on how to differentiate them and the different trucks used on different railroad cars and all that kind of thing. Just absolutely amazing. But that's the type of thing that you see at these RPM meets. It's so good. So
a lot of resources.
This was. I'll just show you one other thing, then we'll go to the questions. There's a guy who did a seminars on steam locomotive hardware. And this was his handout, and it just goes on and on about all of this stuff, information that would go on to a steam locomotive. Here's just kind of an example of a steam locomotive trailing trucks. Not that we have to go into a whole lot of detail, but I just thought that was just such a fantastic deal. So that's why I recommend these RPM meets. And they happen in big cities all over the country.
Okay.
And I'm actually working on maybe going to one outside of Pittsburgh toward the end of March.
All right.
So there. Okay.
We'll talk about that after you go to it in the track talk. After that. We'll have a
All right. There was a lot of talking for one show.
Oh, no.
But anyway, now, questions.
All right. Yep. Start asking more questions in the chat. We only have a few, and we have lots of time. So ask us a bunch of questions, and we'll give you a bunch of answers. Our first question is from JRM Designs, who asks, what is the best way to create a realistic large river in a garden railroad without using real water?
Well, a lot of these artist products you can use outside.
Oh, yeah?
So I guess there's different ways. I mean, people have used, back in the old days, they used actually ripple glass. And I think you can still buy that. They used to put it like in bathroom windows and stuff, or it would just kind of ripply. I mean, that really works great. So you could use that, and then these various acrylic materials are very hardy for being outside. You can use acrylic materials like our
matte medium or gloss medium?
Well, I was going to say gloss medium, and that depending on how much sun it gets, you may have to redo the gloss every so often, but that's one way. Or the epoxy water. There's a couple different brands of water that you can buy that are actually epoxy based, and they just, when they're dry, they're hard as a rock.
Yeah, so they last well.
And anything can get dirty, so you probably have to clean it every so often, wash it off or something. But yeah, I mean, the things you use in indoor model railroading, you can pretty much use in outdoor.
Is glass or matte medium affected by heat or weather? I asked because since we're in the polar vortex, if you have an outdoor layout, is your gloss medium going to hold up in negative 30-degree weather?
Well, it's acrylic, and so the thing about acrylics is that they actually have a certain amount of flex in them. So depending on what your surface is, the surface that this acrylic is mounted on.
Yeah.
I mean, there again, I mean, if something happened and you went through a polar vortex and it cracked, we could always redo it the next year. I mean, that's the thing, because it might, the sun, like I say, the UV rays could affect it to some degree. So you have to be kind of an ongoing process. But
all right. Okay, our next question is, I run a layout using Digitrack's DCC. Out of nowhere, a Pico switch developed a dead spot right in the center. Any idea what might cause this?
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with the DCC. I mean, Pico has an insulated frog. Now, you can either have they make actually two kinds of frogs. There's an insulated frog and basically a plastic frog.
Okay.
And we've talked about that before in other shows. With the metal frog, you can actually add a feed to that frog. If you don't put a feed to it, it's just going to be a dead section of track. And depending on what kind of locomotives you're running in a ladder, it might be a little dead spot.
Yeah.
But you can always add a power feed to it if you have the metal frog. And that's what, depending on your switch control, if you have, like, say, a tortoise machine or a caboose, a hand throw with contacts on it, or there's some other blue point control that works, it's a manual control that works under the layout. Anything with contacts on it, you can use. You need to change the polarity of when the switch throws, but anything that has contacts on it, you can use to power that frog. So, and I'd recommend powering it anyway, just to be safe.
Just to make sure.
You can get dirty wheels or dirty track, and so it's always good to have that stuff powered, I would say.
All right. We also just have a side comment here that says, my freezer is a warmer place than where you live.
Doggone
Which
right
is
it
true.
is. Yeah. Do you want to buy any ice?
Yeah,
I got ice for sale.
Of it. Our next question says, hi Doug, I'm new to modeling. Do you have any general airbrushing tips for weathering my railroad scenery, trains, and track?
Well, I'm really excited about weathering right now because I went through some weathering seminars down there in Florida, and an airbrush is just one way to do weathering.
Yeah.
Not the only way. In fact, you don't want to do all your cars the same because one car is supposed to be maybe 1,000 miles one direction, the other car 1,000 miles the other direction. So you might have two cars next to each other that have completely different weathering depending on where they were. So I like to do a general coat of airbrush weathering. And the thing is, if you're doing cars or you're talking about scenery or track, you don't need a super expensive airbrush for that. It's not, it's not anything super fancy. And I have a Pache airbrush that, I don't know, maybe I spent $50 for it or something, I can't remember. But I mix up weathering colors. using acrylic paints and then thin down with alcohol, or some people like to use Windex. I've tried Windex.
Oh,
it seems
really?
to work. I don't know. Probably either. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When I'm sure Windex probably has alcohol in it. But,
Yeah.
rather than water, don't thin it with water because the water tends to want to beat up.
Oh.
So if you're spraying, like say, a rail, the rail might have a little bit of oil on it just from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
So you want something that'll actually flow rather than wanting to beat up. So
Yeah.
you can thin your basically your water-based paints with alcohol
To make
or
them all
Windex.
thinner.
And so what I've been doing over the polar vortex, I was
Oh.
weathering some cars using a combination of acrylic paints, and I've actually been playing with some oil-based
Oh.
artist paints with using, there's a stuff called turpenoid you can buy, which is like turpentine, but it doesn't have a smell.
Oh,
so you can use
that's
it
nice.
indoors, and you can thin your paints with turpentine.
Yeah.
The oil-based paints tend to flow really nice. If you're going
Yeah.
over a car, a car like a factory molded car might have kind of a surface on it that
Yeah.
kind of slippery, and the water-based paints don't want to stick. So if you use an oil-based
oil.
paint with thinned out with a little bit of this turpenoid, so you put a little bit of your artist oil, squirt it out on a little,
Yep.
wax paper or something that. Something where it won't soak in, and then you can have a little dish of turpentine there. You can dip back and forth between the turpentine and the color,
Yeah.
and brush that on. And then, that said, then you can go over it with an airbrush. What I like to do is do the underside of my car. I mix up a kind of a brownish, blackish, dirty, grimy
Dingy kind of
mix,
color.
and I like to do the underside of my cars with that, just so it has a kind of that basic color. And then also too the roofs. I mean, that's another thing where the roofs get a lot of
Yeah. Wear and tear.
but the sides of the car, they tend to get that streakiness from like rain and all that. So the
Yeah.
side of the car might tend to be more streaky, but then the roof
Oh.
and the underside of the car would probably be more just kind of a solid,
Yeah.
mucky, dirty color. And then, so I have these mixes that I do, and I don't ever do them the same twice. I just kind of do it by the eye. And so one time I might have a little more black or brown,
Yeah.
dark brown, or
So there's a
burnt
variety.
sienna, burnt umber kind of a color. And so, yeah, if I run low on the color, I put a little more in. And then as far as weathering track, your mainline tracks would tend to be more of a dirty color, and then your
Yeah.
sidings might tend to be more of a rusty color,
Oh, yeah.
useless. So, does that answer all his questions?
That does. Just some
Okay.
general tips and tricks is what we wanted. Unless you want to, that was all for cars. Do you have any about scenery that you have any
Well,
preferences
scenery
for?
is the same thing. I mean, you can weather rocks.
Yeah.
You can even spray India ink alcohol mix on rocks, because once you have the rocks in place, the India ink dark stuff is going to flow down the cracks in the rocks, and then
Yeah.
it accentuates the shadow line, which is what you
Yeah.
want. So you want to accent the
Natural
shading.
shadowing.
And I've actually experimented where if you want to do your rock castings, you can spray upward with your airbrush a dark color, and then spray down from the top with a light color. Then there
Oh.
again, that accentuates the light and shadow differential. So yeah, I'm glad you're watching. You're new to the hobby. Send in questions. I love to help people get started. It sounds like you're on the right track.
All right.
Literally.
Literally, yeah. All right. Dwight of the North Star Railroad Lines asks, I have that exact sifter, Doug. I guess that wasn't a question, that was just a comment. See, other people have them. You didn't think they would.
I'm not sure if they're made anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe in an antique store or
Yeah.
a vintage shop you could get one. Our next question is from Nathan DeLay, who asks, have you tried a 3D printer? I have one, and it's amazing what they can do.
Well, I'll tell you what, I took computers back when they had punch cards. And I love 3D printing, and I have a friend who's really good at it. So I don't actually do it myself, but I've been around it and watched what people can do. And when I was at the show in Albany, it was the expo. That was really a structure show, and I saw some fantastic stuff that you can do with 3D printing and laser cutting and all that stuff. And so I'm a big fan of it.
Yes. All right, our next question is, can you give me some help with choosing colors to paint rocks and mountains?
Aha. Well, there's a lot of different color rocks.
Yes, there are. Depends on where your landscape is.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, look at where you're modeling. What's the geology of the area you're modeling, and go from there. And then either go there yourself, or if you can find pictures of the area you're modeling, and look at the colors of the rocks that are there, and that will certainly
help determine.
give you a big help. I mean, and any kind of rock, of course, you're going to want to weather.
Yeah.
So it goes back to that airbrush weathering again. You You can use actually a spray bottle. You don't have to have an airbrush necessarily. You can put colors, not only India ink colors, but you can use weathering colors in a spray bottle, thin them out and use it just a pump spray bottle.
Yeah.
And it'll, there again, the weathering will just naturally run down the cracks and like it would in the real rocks and go from there. So
All right.
hope that helps you. I mean,
Take a field trip, see what the
yeah.
rocks look like.
earth colors, if you go to an art store to buy colors, it's all the earth colors, the umbers and
Yeah.
the siennas and, you know, that kind of stuff is basically what you use for coloring rocks.
All right, our next question is from Spencer 21215. When there's numbers in, I have trouble reading them. Is there an easy way to get lighting into random structures on an N-scale layout?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been experimenting with the very small LEDs that you can buy. I mean, some of them are so doggone small you can't even tell they're
Yeah.
there. They come pre-wired and they're just like a little bump on the wire, and that's the LED.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
it's so small. I mean, it's just crazy small.
Tiny.
But there are various sizes of LEDs and colors of LEDs.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't want to have, like if you're doing an older building, generally it's a warmer color light. So I would experiment around. Just there's so many choices of LEDs. I mean, you don't need to use the super small bulbs or LED lights necessarily, like and say in the interior of a building. You can get away with something a little bigger, but I like to mix them up because you don't want all your buildings to have the same kind of light.
Yeah.
So I even mix up incandescent lights,
Oh, really?
you know, just for the color.
Just to see, yeah.
So you can mix incandescent with LEDs, and then, you know, maybe one area in the building might be lit up a certain way and another area might be lit up a different way. So
Yeah.
experiment around and let us know how you make out.
Yeah, use a variety.
Yeah.
All right, our next question is from Gwen, who asks, can you recommend a good book or website on DCC wiring techniques and practices?
Well, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. Basically, what I've been recommending, there are books, and you can certainly check those out from people, say like Walthers. I mean, they're probably the biggest dealer of that kind of publication stuff. But also go to your local train club and see what they're using.
Yeah.
And compare notes. I mean, I think the best thing is to actually go talk to people that are using this stuff and
Yeah.
get the direct response.
See what they're doing. It's always good to talk to people. Our next question is from Charles, who asks, I have a storage, this is a tip actually, this isn't a question. I have a storage tip. Instead of piling your stuff under your layout, take out all of your clothes from your dresser and stuff them in the closet, and then you can store a lot of stuff in your dresser.
You know, I actually do that.
Do you really?
Well, I have an antique dresser that I inherited from my grandparents.
Yeah.
And I lined the bottom of the drawers with this is kind of like rubber mat type drawer
Yeah.
stuff that you can buy like over at a home improvement store.
Yep.
And I put this rubber mat stuff in there because I want to protect my stuff. And
Yeah.
I have my drawers all full of railroad stuff.
Well, there you go.
Sure, why not?
Then
Sounds
it's
good to
like
me.
out of sight, just kind of hidden,
Yep.
keeps everything else neat.
Pull it out when you want to. Yeah, I love it.
There you go. Our next question is from Tony, who asks, does the physical depth of a river have any difference on the final appearance of the river?
Well, you can be creative.
Yeah.
You know, and of course it depends on how dirty your water is too. I mean,
Yeah.
are you doing fresh water? Are you doing polluted water? Or, you know, so you can use creative methods to make the water look deeper. You can darken it in the center.
Yeah. Do a gradient sort of.
Yeah,
like
do a
rope.
gradient on the underside, and then use as you do layers. I mean, I'm a big fan of doing layers of the water if you're using,
The
say,
matte and gloss medium?
gloss medium layers, and then you can actually add colors in the layers as you
Yeah.
go. So that's easier for me than trying to do it all in one coat.
Yeah.
So, and the neat thing is when you do it in layers, you can look at what you're doing and say, I think I got to do another layer, you know, rather than
Yeah.
trying to figure it
Do it
out
all
all
at
at once. And I mean, your lighting is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So, and we're talking about weathering models. I do the same with my models. I don't get too carried away with weathering a railroad car. I'll do it, and then I'll put it under my layout lighting. I mean,
see
I
what
do
it
it on my
looks like.
workbench, but then I want to see how it looks on my layout under that lighting. And then I might say, I want to do a little more, and come back and do it. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of a slow, but sure, kind
Yeah.
of
You can do a little at a
modeler guy.
time to just see, and then you can always add more, but you can't take away.
Right. So a little bit at a time, and just see what you think. But
All right.
be creative.
Be creative. Our next question is, what can I use to make rubber molds that is cheap to buy or make my own?
Well, you can buy that RTV moldings rubber from Michaels.
Yeah.
And I've seen guys work with that, and it's really a very good quality. I mean,
Yeah.
You want to do multiple coats to make the actual rubber strong enough so you can pull it off of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
But I've seen some really good work with that RTV rubber, and I think they're pretty much Michaels all over the country,
Yeah.
aren't there? So if you check out Michaels in your area and just talk to them and just ask them about their RTV rubber, I think that's the way to go.
All right, our next question is, speaking of tools, since we were talking about the flour sifter, what do you suggest are the must-have tools for model railroading? Do you have like a top tools list?
Oh, well, I'm going to bring in some more tools next time. I try to show some tools every time, but it depends on what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
I have, what I have? I have these, like silverware trays. You ever seen those silverware trays
Yeah, separate your knives,
where they kind of hook
spoons.
together, where like each one is sort of individual, and then there are long ones and short ones and all that. So I have these trays of tools, and I'll pull out different tools for different jobs. Like when I'm doing my weathering, I use flat brushes for that. If I'm doing streaking in the side of the car, I use flat, soft brushes as an example. So I have them in one tray, and then I have like dental picks, and I have cardboard fingernail files. I have actually a sharpening stone that I like for if I want to, rather than, I can use it for sharpening my X-Acto knife while I'm working, but I can also use it for if I want to sand something flat, or I have something like a sprue or something on it, you can actually sand that on that block, move the material rather than the file, and sand it right on that block. And so, it depends. As I've gotten older, I figured out that I got to keep all my tools separated, so I know what's what when I do it. I have way too many tools.
Yeah.
Which, I love tools.
Yeah.
So, but you want to have the right tool for the right job, and then you don't want to spend half your time looking for your tool. You want to actually do the work. So,
have it in the
where
right
the heck did I put that tool? So I also have these little parts drawers like you can buy at a home improvement stores. There's little parts drawers where you can put the labels on it. So I then label, everything is labeled, so I know what's in the drawers. And, being organized is very important.
Stay organized. That's a big takeaway. Our next question is from Nathan DeLay, who asks, I scratch build locomotives out of soda cans. Oh, do you know how scratch built locomotives got started for the first time? Do you know the origin of scratch-built locomotives?
Well, I'll tell you what, because I was a kid and worked in a hobby store, and the guys would come in there who actually were modelers before World War II.
Oh, wow.
And just amazing to talk to these guys, because they didn't have anything that we have now.
Yeah.
They're completely different. And especially during the war, you couldn't get metal and all that. So these guys would tell me stories about how they would have to use soup cans.
Yep. Wow.
Metal soup cans, take the ends off and flatten them out.
Oh.
And use them for building models.
Very interesting.
And they would do real elementary sand casting using lead, which of course you probably don't want to do nowadays. But anyway, they do melt lead and they'd have to make, carve a part out of wood to make the mold, and then they'd actually do sand castings and pour the lead in there. It's just an amazing, I'm so glad that I knew these guys. It's amazing education on just can-do kind of model work. You just figure it out.
Very interesting, yeah. All right, our next question is, I'm recently retired, hooray!
Hey!
And I can finally get back to my railroading hobby, another hooray. I have a large collection of HO locomotives, some of which are very old, and some are recent purchases of excellent DCC-enabled locomotives. So my question is it worth trying to get the older locomotives back into serviceable condition, including DCC, if there's enough room, or might I be better off simply using the old ones as scenic accessories in the roundhouse, in dead sidings and reachable spots? Et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's a tough one because, I have stuff that I just hate to get rid of because I love it and it's a little old. But, the modeling, the actual manufacturing quality of models is so doggone good nowadays. It really puts those old models to shame, unfortunately. So what are you going to do? It's a real hard choice. And the models, the new models are if you buy them DCC equipped or with sound, they're just jam full of stuff.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to get that same kind of detail and sound and electronics and everything, it's so much easier to buy it with all factory installed rather than otherwise you have an old model, you're carving weights out and trying to figure out where to fit all the stuff inside.
Yeah.
And so I sort of over the years came to the realization that it's probably easier I'd rather work on something else. I'd rather work on something creative. I mean, just buy it ready to go and not have to work with all that machine stuff and trying to watchmaking kind of fitting. So it kind of depends. It's personal preference. If you like something, you can certainly change it over to DCC. And you can add details. You can buy detail parts and add them to the model. So yeah, personal preference.
All right. Our next question is from Larry Bergerin, who says, "Hi, I'm new to the hobby. Can you put resistor wheels on a truck that has pickups for car lighting?"
Well, you probably wouldn't want to, the resistor wheel would sort of defeat the car lighting. I mean, you could certainly do it on other wheels that don't have lighting pickup. But I mean, the whole idea of lighting pickup is you're picking up from one rail and not the other. If you picked up from both rails, it would short out. Well, that's what a resistor basically does, is you're going across the two rails, and you can use resistor wheels for other things like detection, current detection, and signaling and all that kind of stuff. But you'd be better off separating those wheels. If either do one or the other. Don't try to do them both.
All right. Our next question is, have you used servos for HO turnouts, and what do you use?
Well, I have used servos. I've experimented around. I don't know if I can even tell you the brands, because they're basically people who would make hardware more for model airplanes.
Oh, okay.
And they work, although I've had mixed results. You got to be really careful with what you're doing, and it involves programming. And I've had servos that were unreliable, and it would vibrate and all kinds of stuff like that. And so, I mean, I'm probably showing my age, my old-fashioned thinking, but I've used tortoise switch motors forever, and they're reliable. They're a low current motor. They run to stall. They have contacts on them for feeding your frogs, and I just I like that kind of a system. It's heavy duty and reliable
and durable.
And I don't want to badmouth the servos too much, because there's a lot of I love the new technology that's coming out, but. Yeah, for me, I'd stay with the old reliable, personally.
The tried and true. Our next question is from Tim Cunningham, who asks, I have been using Chooch stick-on stone sheets, but have problems with them becoming stiff and curling up. Is there a way to prevent this?
I've had exactly the same problem. Oh. And, I don't know what to say about that. You got to be careful. Sometimes the sticky back doesn't really stick as good as it should. But you have to be real careful about putting the glue on there, because if you use like a solvent-based glue, like say Walther's Goo or some kind of contact cement, the contact cement will kind of attack that plastic material that Chooch stone is made out of and make it even worse.
Oh boy! So
I've actually, I've used acrylic glues, and you have to cheat sometimes and put a very tiny little, like a little track nail in through the stone, like through the mortar and the stone, just to hold it on, and I like the Chooch material, but I don't know what to tell you about that. I don't know if it's something that there people have said that that kind of stuff can be affected by UV in your lighting. People have said that if you have fluorescent lights of your layout, they can affect things like that. So I'm using all LEDs over my layout. No fluorescence. So
there you go.
Yeah, it could be fluorescence.
All right. Our next question is from Tom, who asks, Doug, have you used frosted window film for your buildings and passenger cars, or do you have any suggestions on where to purchase them?
Well, I'll tell you what. I have frosted my own window film using airbrush, and I found that if you actually put a clear glass in the outside surface and then put the frosted one behind it, it doesn't look quite so fakey. And it looks a little bit fakey if you put the frosted right in the front. But going back to my old days at the hobby shop when I was a kid, a guy brought me a whole box full of, let me see, would they be exposed or unexposed? Unexposed negatives, I guess. I have a whole box of them, a lifetime supply of these things. And I just gave some to a buddy of mine the other day who's doing some warehouses. But these are photo film that are sort of, well, they're half dark, and it's neat because they're just sort of hazy. They look like a what am I trying to say?
Like cloudy, gray.
Like tinted glass. I mean, they really look like tinted glass, kind of. And I do the same thing. I put it behind the clear glass, but it's really neat stuff. If you're interested, send me your information, and I'll send you some samples of it. And I don't know, maybe you can still get it. I mean, the photo. Who does photo negatives anymore? But I'd be happy to send you some samples, and you can see what it's like.
All right. Our next question is from Ivan, who asks, what can I do to start a model train layout? It's a new hobby for me. Where can I buy trains or tracks?
Aha, well, that's a very good question. Generally, and we've answered this before in other shows, I mean, the thing is to start small.
Yeah.
And it's considered kind of a practice layout, your first layout.
Yeah.
And I would go to find some train shows in your area or train clubs in your area and look around and see what they're doing. Look at all the different models, because you have to decide on what scale do you want to use. Do you want to use N scale, HO scale, all those things. So there's a lot of decisions to make, and I would go talk to some actual modelers in your area and see what they're doing, and go from there. And then when you do get started, get a hold of us again.
Yeah.
And
ask us more questions.
Yeah, we'll help you, kind of guide you down that path. We want you to be happy with your hobby.
Yeah. All right, this is our last question, unless anybody else asks another question in the chat while we're answering it. So this question is from JRM Designs, who asks, this isn't even, this is in response to another one. Christine McNary in Fallon, Nevada does great work on DCC and sound installs plus weathering. And then they left her website there.
Oh,
so
great. I'm not familiar with her, but yeah, that's super. Yeah, that's another option. You could send your models off to somebody who does that kind of work.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also, as a side note for everybody, we talked a lot about handmade tools and Doug's little sifter here, and we just dropped a link in the chat that's 10 household items perfect for modeling. So you might have some of these 10 items laying around your home, so click that link and see if any of those items are something you want to use in your home.
All right, dig through the junk drawer and see what you can find.
See what you can find. All right, do you have any closing remarks for us, Doug?
Well, this was a great show on some super questions, and I'm hoping that we'll get some, I'd like to see some photographs of unusual tools sent in, and comments about any of these things we talked about, and yeah, keep them coming.
Well, on that note, I'm Miss Choo Choo, and this is Mr. Clickety, and we will see you next time. Bye.